Let me say again, I appreciate some of you have been working through the period between Christmas and New Year, and indeed many of you providing the vital services, and I'm hugely grateful. But I would imagine if you were able to get to family gatherings over Christmas or whatever it is that you celebrate, possibly the state of the country came up, possibly the election result, and a general sense that although they've taken on an enormous, monumental task, the building blocks aren't there. Now, there was a poll in a newspaper yesterday that seemed to cite a degree of unrest, but here is the exclusive LBC poll now with the headline I've told you already. A quarter of you who voted Labour now, it would appear, regret backing Sir Keir Starmer. Here, with all the details, in the studio with me, LBC's political editor, Natasha Clark. Natasha, morning to you.
Morning, Nick. Yes, it's 6 months to the day that Keir Starmer entered Downing Street, sweeping into power with that landslide majority. So to take the temperature, as MPs go back today, we looked at the challenges ahead for the Prime Minister and how voters have found Keir Starmer's first 6 months in office. And our exclusive poll done for us by More in Common was pretty damning, I have to say. It reveals, like you said, 1 in 4 people who backed Labour last year, now they regret their vote, and the public see taking winter fuel payments and the so-called farmers' tax as worse than Partygate was for the Tories. Now, more than half of all those voters...
That's astonishing.
It is.
Just
it
go over that
really,
again.
really
Just
is.
tell me that again.
So the public now see some of the scandals.
Yeah,
they
farmers.
They see the farmers' tax. They see winter fuel payments as now worse than Partygate was for the Tories.
Takes some doing, doesn't it?
It really, really is astonishing poll, Nick. And now more than half of all voters think they have a worse opinion of Keir Starmer's government after 6 months in power. Here's just a flavour of what our focus group had to say about the last 6 months.
Must try harder and must talk less. They've not delivered. They are just as bad as Conservatives nowadays. It's the same old story, but under a different guise of being in red instead of blue.
I'm probably going to give it a bit of an F for fail. I think that a lot of people who, including myself, who voted for Labour are actually quite disappointed with how things have been going so far. Everything they seem to be doing seems to be unpopular.
The cost of living crisis, and I don't think they've done anything whatsoever to address that.
The budget was awful, and it's like they're hitting the working class.
Yeah, it's just been a disaster from start to finish.
People that have voted in good faith that some good's going to come out of this, and it's just disastrous. It's an absolute joke.
These guys are just told a pack of lies to get in, and they're pretty much doing the same thing.
And we also spoke with More in Common's Luke Trill. He did the polling for us. He said that Labour Party strategists should be really worried.
What we heard in the focus group from people who had switched from voting Conservative to voting Labour was just a real sense that the government hadn't lived up to their expectations, that they were going to have to try much harder, and that they'd made a series of early missteps. It's then striking that you hear some of that frustration, you see some of that frustration confirmed in the poll data, and I think Labour strategists will be quite worried.
So some really, really damning stuff in that poll, Nick. And the Prime Minister is going to be talking about this today. He's on the front foot as he spells out his plan for tackling waiting lists this morning. So he's going to be talking about more community diagnostic centres, using the NHS app more same-day tests and appointments. And that, according to what our poll, is the top priority for his government this year. The NHS and the economy came top, joint on 26%. Migration, interestingly, Nick, was third on 20%. We also asked them about...
I have to ask what was second then, do we know?
Sorry, NHS, then the economy.
Then the economy, sorry.
They were both joint on 26%.
I see, I'm so sorry.
And we did ask the public as well about their experience of the NHS, whether they felt that things had got any better since in the last 6 months since the Labour government had got in. They were quite gloomy on that one as well. 3 in 4 people we asked said they have experienced no improvement in the NHS, and that more people, 35%, say it's got worse than it's got better. Outside of London, Nick, that is really, really stark as well. 1 in 3 Londoners say they've seen NHS improvements compared to just 12% in the North East. So a huge uphill battle for the Prime Minister to get going with his plan, show he's with the public, he's out and about delivering. Labour also have responded to this specific poll as well today. They say that the government is getting on with delivering the plan for change. They've been clear from the outset that means taking tough decisions needed to undo 14 years of Tory chaos and decline. So yes, a very, very difficult poll for the Prime Minister to kick off what's going to be, I'm sure, a very difficult year for the government.
LBC's political editor Natasha Clark reporting with that exclusive poll 10 minutes after 7. Listening is Tom Baldwin. Now, Tom is a journalist and served as senior advisor of the Labour Party, also authored Keir Starmer, the biography, and joins me now. Good to have you on board, Tom. How concerned will the government be? How concerned should they be about polls such as these? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, sir.
Look, polls don't change people's lives.
No.
What they would say is the stuff they're announcing this morning about, cutting the waiting list of people waiting for 18 weeks or more by 500,000 this year, that will begin to change people's lives. And a lot of the unpopular decisions they've taken, whether it's, winter fuel allowance or raising national insurance for employers or not compensating WASPy women or having inheritance tax on the richest landowners in the country, that's been about raising money or not spending money you don't have, so you can focus priorities, so you can focus resources on really changing people's lives. And they're beginning to spend some of that money today in the NHS with the new diagnostic hubs, which are going to open, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. That will begin to make a difference to a lot of people's lives, and more than any poll will.
Tom, how much is this down to what's called expectation management?
Well, I think a lot of successful governments, and you'll remember this with Margaret Thatcher, she did a lot of unpopular stuff at the start of her premiership, and her opinion poll ratings were awful. But by doing that unpopular stuff right at the beginning, it allowed her to build a base, get on with it, and bring some change. So I think they were braced for a hit in terms of their popularity in the short term. They won't like these polls, but they thought this was coming. And they knew they were going to have to do a lot of really difficult stuff at the start of this government, and that's what they're getting on and doing.
If you were to look at a timetable, when do you imagine the mood might not start to swing more behind them then?
Well, look, they're spending £26 billion more on the NHS in the next 2 years. It's the biggest increase since, I think, 2010, last time they were in government. And they're also doing reforms. It's not just about spending money, they're reforming the NHS. That will take time. I think by the middle of this parliament, you'll begin to see a difference in the NHS. But it's like turning a tanker around. It doesn't happen immediately.
Lastly, how do you quantify the scale of the challenge that faced the government when they came in 6 months ago?
I think it's the worst inheritance that any British government has had since 1945. I don't think they've done particularly brilliantly at winning that argument. I think they got caught up in sort of other stuff about, it's even worse than we thought or something
Black
like that.
holes and various else, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they're just, if you just lay out everything from sewage in rivers to our soft power internationally to crumbling schools to a broken NHS to an economy with absolutely no public finance left in it, a demoralised country. It's broken and it takes a bit of time to fix. What's encouraging for me is that we've got a Prime Minister who's really resilient, who's really focused, and he's getting on with the stuff that he's announcing today, which will make more of a difference to people's lives than any opinion poll.
Really enjoyed speaking with you, Tom. Have a good one. Thank you. Tom Baldwin, journalist, former senior advisor of the Labour Party, and his book, Keir Starmer, The Biography. And now over to you at 13 minutes after 7. It's a very simple one. Now, there was the poll yesterday in the Mail on Sunday. There's the LBC poll today. And as Natasha told you just a few minutes ago, we're just 6 months into the life of this government. They've got a long way to go. But even their most fervent supporters would say it's not been the most sure-footed of starts, has it? And when you look at some of the self-inflicted wounds as well. But the scale of the challenge they took on was enormous, as I just referenced. So if you did vote for them, are you prepared to say, look, they've got months before you've got any concern. They've got 4.5 years before they need to go to the polls. And maybe there is a touch of the Thatchers here. Get all the ugly decisions out, get them out there, do it all, and then start to hopefully see the mood to come back, the wind get into your sails and you carry on. Or are these now, there's 2 days, there's us today, there's the newspaper yesterday, 2 days, 2 polls, really bad results. There should be a degree of concern. Which is it for you? We'll look at that. Plus, we have to be